Nobody warns you that a ringing phone can feel like an ambush. That sudden buzz, that name flashing on the screen. And before you even know what the call is about, your stomach drops a little. Your thumb hovers over the screen. And then you let it ring out. You tell yourself you'll call back later. You probably won't. Instead, you'll text. Sorry, missed this, what's up? And somehow that feels so much safer. Lighter, like you dodge something you can't quite name. If this is you, you've probably been told you're avoidant, antisocial, rude even. Some older relative has sighed and said, "Why don't you just pick up the phone anymore?" As if answering a call the instant it rings is the bare minimum of being a decent person, and anything less is a character flaw. But here's what's fascinating. The research doesn't support that story at all. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that phone calls create a measurable spike in physiological anxiety, even in people who aren't socially anxious in general settings. Just the anticipation of a call, before a single word has been spoken, activates a stress response similar to being unexpectedly put on the spot in front of others. Think about what a phone call actually demands of you. Real-time reaction. No edits. No pause to think something through. No deleting a sentence before you send it. You have to respond instantly, tone and all, with zero room to compose yourself first. It's improv, and nobody asked whether you wanted to perform tonight. Texting doesn't do that to you. Texting hands back something a call quietly takes away. Time. Time to think. Time to choose your words carefully. Time to decide how much of yourself you actually want to show up in this exchange. Right now, in this particular moment. And for a huge number of people, that's not avoidance dressed up as a preference. That's self-protection, plain and simple. Here's the deeper layer psychologists point to. It isn't about disliking people. It's about control. A phone call is unpredictable by design. You don't know the tone, the mood, or the reason behind it until you're already standing inside it. There's no preview screen for a conversation. You just answer and find out live, in front of an audience of one, with no script and no rehearsal. For people who process emotions internally, who like to sit with a thought before they speak it out loud, the unpredictability isn't exciting. It's exhausting. It's not that they don't want the connection. It's that they want that connection on terms where they can actually show up as their best, most intentional self instead of their startled, half-formed one. There's also a quieter fear buried underneath all of this, one people rarely say out loud, the fear of being a burden in real time. On a call, if there's an awkward pause, everyone hears it. Everyone feels it stretch. There's nowhere to hide while you figure out what to say next, no way to soften the silence. A text, though, you can take 30 seconds or 3 hours to respond, and nobody watches you sweat through the gap in between. But here's what makes this even more interesting. This isn't just personality, it's generational too. People who grew up with texting as their first form of independent communication learned an entirely different social language from the one before them. For them, texting was never the lesser, lazier version of talking. It was always the native one. Calling feels like being handed a second language and asked to perform in it on the spot, in public, without warning or preparation. And yet, this group isn't cold, whatever the stereotype says. They'll write you a thoughtful paragraph checking in on you at midnight when everyone else has gone quiet. They'll remember the small detail you mentioned 3 weeks ago in passing and text you about it out of nowhere just to say they were thinking of you. The care is absolutely there. It just doesn't arrive at the volume of a ringtone, and it never announces itself. There's something else worth naming here. The sense of permanence a text gives you that a call never can. A message sits there. You can reread it, sit with it, come back to it when you're steadier. A phone call disappears the second it ends, half remembered, easy to misquote in your own head later. For people who like to hold on to exact words, texting isn't distance. It's clarity they can return to. There's a specific scene that plays out in almost every one of these people's lives, over and over. Dinner with family, phone buzzing on the table, screen lighting up, someone's name scrolling across it, and instead of reaching for it, they flip it face down, not out of disrespect for the person calling, out of self-preservation for the version of themselves sitting at that table. They know that answering means splitting their attention in a way that satisfies no one, least of all them. So they let it ring out, promise themselves they'll deal with it later, and mean it. Psychologists studying communication preferences have started distinguishing between what they call synchronous and asynchronous interaction. A call is synchronous, both people locked into the same moment, reacting live with no room to step away and think. A text is asynchronous. You can respond in your own time, on your own terms, without the conversation collapsing if you need 30 seconds to figure out what you actually mean. And what the research keeps showing is that a preference for asynchronous communication isn't a deficit. It's simply a different operating rhythm, one that a lot of modern life was never built to accommodate. Consider how much of a phone call is actually about performance rather than content. The cheerful tone you have to conjure the second you pick up, even mid-crisis. The small talk you have to generate before you can get to the actual point. The pressure to fill every silence before it turns awkward. None of that is communication in its purest form. It's social choreography layered on top of communication. And for a lot of people, that choreography is the exhausting part, not the connecting part. Texting strips the choreography away. What's left is just the message, just the thing you actually meant to say, without the throat clearing and the performance of enthusiasm wrapped around it. And for people who find small talk genuinely draining rather than energizing, that's not a small relief. It's the difference between dreading contact and welcoming it. So if you're someone who feels your chest tighten the moment your phone rings, who would rather write 3 thoughtful sentences than say 10 rushed, half-formed ones, you're not broken and you're not rude. You're someone who values intention over immediacy. You'd rather connect well than connect fast, and there's nothing wrong with that trade. It's worth saying too that this preference often gets misread as coldness by people who communicate the opposite way. The ones who process out loud, who think by talking, who find a phone call energizing rather than draining. To them, a quick call feels like warmth, efficiency, closeness. So when someone declines that call in favor of a text, it can land as rejection, even when nothing could be further from the truth. Neither style is wrong. They're just tuned to different frequencies, and the friction shows up not because anyone is being unkind, but because nobody's explained that the frequencies are different in the first place. The people who actually matter to you will learn your language without needing to be convinced. And the ones who insist you're wrong for preferring it, who keep score over how quickly you pick up. They were never really asking for connection in the first place. They were asking for convenience and calling it closeness. If this explains something about you, hit subscribe. There's a lot more of this coming. And if you know someone who screens every single call, but somehow always shows up, fully, for the people they love, send them this one. They'll know exactly what it means.